Piers Fallon didn't expect the cracked sidewalks and faded storefronts of his old neighborhood to hit him like a punch to the chest, but they did, hard. He stepped out of the sleek black Maybach idling at the corner of Ashford and Maple, the engine purring behind him like it didn't belong here. He adjusted the cuffs of his tailored navy blazer, his Rolex catching the late afternoon light, and tried to breathe through the strange mix of nostalgia and guilt that came with being back. It had been 15 years. "Wait here," he told his driver. The neighborhood hadn't changed much, which was part of the problem. Same brick buildings, same rusted fences, same corner store with the flickering open sign. The only new thing was a hand-painted mural across the side wall of the old bakery, vivid, alive, and somehow filled with hope. He walked toward it, his Italian loafers crunching over scattered leaves. That's when he heard the voice. "Hey, could you not stand in front of the mural? I'm trying to take a photo for the fundraiser." He turned, startled. The woman standing 10 feet away had paint-splattered jeans, a camera slung around her neck, and a fire in her hazel eyes that made him forget what he was about to say. Her dark brown hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she had paint on her cheek. Sorry," he said, stepping aside. "Didn't realize I was blocking it." She laughed under her breath. "It's fine. Most people don't. They just see a wall and stop." Piers looked back at the mural, two children holding hands beneath a tree, color exploding in every direction. "You did this?" he asked. "Yeah. Well, me and a few kids from the community center. It's part of a youth art project I run." He nodded slowly. "It's beautiful." "Thanks," she replied, eyeing him with cautious curiosity. "You're not from around here, are you?" "I used to be." She raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? Lived 2 blocks down. Moved out when I was 17. Her gaze flicked to the car behind him. "Guess life's been good to you since." He smiled faintly. "You could say that." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she crouched to adjust something on her camera, then stood. "Willa Anderson," she said, holding out her hand. "Piers Fallon." She blinked. "Wait, Fallon? Like Fallon Enterprises?" He hesitated, then nodded. Her eyes widened. "You're that Piers Fallon? The guy who turned some failing logistics company into a global tech thing?" "That's me." "Well, damn," she said, clearly surprised. "Didn't expect to meet a millionaire standing in front of my mural." "I didn't expect to meet a muralist with attitude," he shot back, amused. She really laughed, and it made something tight in his chest loosen. "Touché." They stood there for a second, just looking at each other. "You want to see the center?" she asked suddenly. "It's 2 blocks down. We're trying to raise money for a new roof." Piers hesitated. He had meetings lined up back at the hotel, an entire board waiting on his call. But instead, he said, "Lead the way." The community center was smaller than he remembered, but clean, full of color, and clearly loved. Kids' drawings lined the walls, music floated from a back room, and there was laughter, real, joyful, uninterrupted laughter. Willa showed him around like he was anyone else. No fanfare, no fake smiles. Just honesty. "This place saved my life," she said as they walked through the main hall. "I was a mess when I was 16. My dad left, my mom was working 2 jobs, and I was angry all the time. But this place gave me something to care about." "What made you come back here?" he asked. "I never left," she replied simply. "Went to school nearby, got my degree in art education, and came right back. These kids deserve someone who actually gives a damn." He looked at her, really looked at her. She was fierce, passionate, and so rooted in this place. Everything he'd walked away from, she'd chosen to stay and protect. "You're incredible," he said before he could stop himself. She glanced at him, her cheeks flushing. "I'm just doing what needs to be done." He stayed longer than he planned. An hour turned into 2. She introduced him to the kids, let him paint a ridiculous smiley face on the wall of the art room. "You're lucky I don't grade that," she teased, and even convinced him to help move a stack of supplies. And the more time he spent near her, the more he felt something he hadn't felt in years, real. By the time they stepped outside, the sun was low and the sky was streaked with orange and purple. So, she said, folding her arms. You gonna disappear back into your penthouse now? He hesitated. Not tonight. She tilted her head. No? I haven't had dinner yet, he said. And I hear there's a pizza place around the corner that still makes the best pepperoni in the city. Her eyes sparkled and she laughed again. Tony's? Still open. Still greasy. Still amazing. Come with me. She looked surprised. You want me to eat pizza with you? I want to eat pizza with you, he corrected, smiling. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but if you try to pay with a platinum card, I'm walking out. They sat in a booth at Tony's, red vinyl seats and all, sharing a large pepperoni and a root beer float. He told her about traveling, about the pressure of being in charge of 1,000 employees, about how nothing ever felt real anymore. She told him about the kids, about fighting to keep the doors open every year, about how she sometimes felt like she was shouting into a void. I don't think I've laughed this much in years, he admitted, watching her across the table. She smiled softly. Me either. Something shifted between them, then unspoken but powerful. Outside, beneath the flickering neon sign, he turned to her. I'm supposed to fly back to New York tomorrow. She nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. I figured. But I don't want to. She looked up. What do you want? He reached for her hand. I want to see you again, Willa. Her breath caught. This supposed to be a one-night nostalgia trip, Fallon? No, he said, voice low. I think I just met someone who makes me want to stay. And for the first time in a long time, he meant every word. Rain whispered against the window panes of the corner cafe as Piers sat across from Willa, the next morning's gray light softening the angles of her face. Neither of them had planned to meet again so soon, yet here they were, coffee between them, silence stretching comfortably. Willa stirred her drink slowly. I don't usually do this, she said, not looking up. Have coffee? Piers asked. Have coffee with someone I barely know. 2 days in a row. I figured that was obvious, he said, his tone easy but careful. The way you kept looking at the door like you might bolt. She gave a short laugh. You noticed that? I notice a lot. She finally lifted her eyes. Then you probably noticed I wasn't exactly sure why I said yes to this. You said yes because you wanted to. No, she said, leaning back. I said yes because something about you doesn't add up. And I don't like puzzles unless I get to finish them. He didn't flinch. What doesn't add up? You walked in here yesterday like a man with a destination. But nothing about you says you plan to stay. So why are you still here? Piers paused, took a sip of his espresso. Because I didn't expect this place to matter again. And I definitely didn't expect you. Willa tapped her fingers on the side of her cup. Flattery only works on me when it's not rehearsed. I don't rehearse, he said. Not anymore. She narrowed her eyes. What changed? He leaned forward. I used to think success meant cutting ties. Moving on. But coming back here? Seeing what you're doing? You're building something that lasts. I'm starting to question if I ever did. She tilted her head. That sounds a lot like regret. Maybe it is. He didn't look away. Outside, a boy on a skateboard zipped past the window, shouting something that made a group of teenagers laugh. Willa watched them, her expression unreadable. You want to help? She asked. I do. Then don't just throw money at us and disappear. I wasn't planning on disappearing. She studied him. People like you always plan their exits. I've seen it before. Big promises, then silence. I'm not people like that, he said, his voice steady. She crossed her arms. Then prove it. He reached into his blazer and pulled out a slim leather notebook. I had a meeting yesterday with the head of an urban investment firm. They're looking to back grassroots programs. I told them about your center. Her brow lifted. You mentioned us? I'm not asking for permission, he said. I'm asking if you want me involved. She looked at him, weighing something in her mind. You're not used to asking. No, he admitted. But I'll start if that's what it takes. Willa exhaled and set her cup down. We're hosting an open mic night tonight. Fundraiser. Kids perform, we sell art, try to get donations. Think you can handle a folding chair and a crowd that doesn't care who you used to be? He met her gaze. Try me. She stood, gathering her coat. Be there by 6. Don't bring a camera crew. He chuckled. No suits either? Only if you want to be mistaken for the fire marshal. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. As she stepped into it, she turned back once. Piers. Yeah. You still have paint on your shoe. He glanced down. A streak of cobalt blue clung to the side of his otherwise immaculate loafer. I'll leave it, he said. Might be the best part of the outfit. Her smile was quick, then gone. By the time Piers arrived at the community center that evening, the place buzzed with energy. String lights crisscrossed the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the mismatched chairs and handmade decorations. Kids darted around with nervous excitement, and the scent of popcorn drifted through the air. Willa stood near the makeshift stage, clipboard in hand, giving instructions to a boy adjusting a microphone. Need a job? She asked when she spotted Piers. I was hoping you'd ask. She handed him a stack of programs. Distribute these. And if anyone tries to sneak out without paying the suggested donation, guilt-trip them. You've got the voice for it. He raised a brow. You're not even pretending to be impressed. I'm saving that for after you survive the chaos. He moved through the crowd with ease, speaking to parents, handing out programs, and making a few subtle connections. Every now and then he caught Willa watching him from across the room, but not with suspicion anymore. Curiosity, maybe. Something warmer. The performances were raw and honest. A girl rapped about her brother's arrest. A boy read a poem about his mother's second job. A trio sang a cover of an old soul song that made half the room quiet in reverence. Piers hadn't expected to feel so much. But by the time the last act finished and applause thundered through the space, he was on his feet with everyone else. Afterward, Willa found him outside by the loading ramp, the night air cool and scented with wet pavement. You stayed the whole time, she said. Wasn't hard. They were incredible. She nodded. They work harder than most adults I know. He turned to her. You made this happen. I just gave them a stage. He looked at her for a long moment. You're more than that, Willa. You're the reason they believe they can be more. She didn't respond right away. Then softly, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time. I meant every word. For a second, the quiet between them was thick with something neither of them wanted to name yet. You should know, she said finally, we raised enough tonight to fix the leak over the art room. That's a start. She glanced at him. You planning on sticking around for the rest? That depends, he said. You planning on letting me? Her eyes didn't leave his. We'll see. And though her words were cautious, her voice held something he hadn't heard the day before, possibility. The next morning began with the unexpected clang of a hammer against metal. Piers stood on the roof of the community center, sleeves rolled to his elbows, watching two contractors pull up rotted panels from the northeast corner near the art room. Sunlight caught in the dust as it drifted across the tarred surface. He hadn't planned to be here this early. But when Willa had mentioned the roof repairs might start within the week, he'd made a few discreet calls after leaving the fundraiser. Now it was barely 9, and the workers were already halfway through the first section. Willa's voice drifted up from the sidewalk. You bribed a roofing crew to show up before breakfast? He turned, shielding his eyes. I asked nicely. And paid them double. She climbed the narrow ladder with surprising ease and stepped onto the roof beside him, arms folded. They were booked for 2 months. They had a last-minute cancellation, he said. Her brow lifted. A cancellation you manufactured? He gave a small shrug. I wanted this done before the next rainfall. She walked past him, eyeing the exposed beams. You don't know how to do things halfway, do you? Is that a problem? Depends. Are you trying to impress me or control the outcome? He looked at her, serious now. Neither. I just don't like waiting when something can be fixed today. She didn't respond for a moment, then said, There's a difference between fixing a roof and fixing people. I know that. Do you? She asked, finally meeting his eyes. Because it feels like you're trying to build something here without asking what it's supposed to be. I'm not trying to take over, he said. I just want to help. Then stop leading with your wallet. Piers blinked. That's not fair. It's honest, she replied, and her tone wasn't cruel, just clear. You show up with solutions, but some of us have been living the problems for years. We don't need a rescue. We need someone who'll stay when it's not convenient. I'm here, aren't I? For now, she said, stepping back toward the ladder. Let's see what happens when your world calls you back. After she left, he stayed on the roof alone, watching the crew work. Her words pressed against his chest like weight. It would have been easier if she just thanked him, smiled, and let him play hero. But she didn't. And somehow that made him want to try harder, not with money, but with something he hadn't used in years, time. Later that afternoon, he found himself standing in the back row of a classroom where a dozen kids were bent over sketch pads. Willa was at the front demonstrating shading techniques with charcoal. Her voice was calm, her movements precise. When she dismissed the class, she didn't acknowledge him right away. Instead, she gathered used stubs of charcoal into a tin, stacking sketchbooks into neat piles. I didn't mean to undermine you, he said finally. Willa didn't look up. You didn't. Then why did it feel like you were warning me off? She sighed. Because when people with power get involved, they tend to rearrange everything to suit themselves. I've seen it before. Grants with strings, investors who want naming rights. This place isn't a brand. It's a second chance for a lot of kids who don't get many. I'm not looking for credit, he said. Or control. Then what are you looking for? Something real. That made her pause. She turned to face him. You already have more than most people could dream of. Why would you want this? He leaned against the doorframe. Because none of that feels like mine anymore. The boardrooms, the penthouses, the dinners with people who only care about numbers, it's noise. But here there's purpose. She looked at him for a long beat. You talk like someone who's lost himself. Maybe I have. And you think you'll find yourself? Here. No, he said. I think I'll find something better. Willa didn't soften. But she nodded once as if accepting the answer for now. That evening, she didn't invite him to dinner. Instead, she handed him a paintbrush and pointed to the half-finished mural wrapping the other side of the building. You want to help? Help finish this. He worked in silence beside her for over an hour, filling in the outline of a phoenix rising from a burst of orange and red. His strokes were uneven, but she didn't correct him. Only after the sun dipped behind the rooftops did she speak again. My dad used to say you can tell the difference between someone who stays and someone who visits by how they clean up at the end of the day. Piers looked at her. Paint on his fingers, sweat on his brow. Am I passing the test yet? You haven't left, she said. That's something. He didn't push for more. The next day, he made himself useful organizing supply closets, helping repair a broken window latch, even running to a hardware store with one of the volunteers. He kept his phone in his pocket the entire time, ignoring the string of missed calls from his assistant and 2 unread messages from his CFO. On the third day, a black SUV pulled up outside the center. A woman in a navy pantsuit stepped out, heels sharp against the pavement. Mr. Fallon, she called. We need to talk. Willa came out of the building just in time to see the exchange. Give me a minute, he told her, then walked toward the woman. She handed him a folder. The Shanghai deal's unraveling. We need your signature to secure the merger. The board's panicking. Tell them I'll look at it tomorrow. They're not waiting that long. He closed the folder. Then they'll wait anyway. Her eyes widened. You're going to risk a multi-million-dollar acquisition for this? He glanced behind him, where Willa leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching with unreadable eyes. It's not a risk, he said. It's a choice. That night, he found her locking up the center. You didn't have to prove anything, she said. I wasn't trying to. So why did you stay? Piers looked at her, then stepped closer. Because this is the first place I've been in years where I didn't feel like a transaction. She didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, she said, You're not a transaction to me. And just like that, something shifted between them again, quieter this time. Deeper. He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. Willa stood barefoot on the cool tiles of her apartment kitchen, brushing flour from her hands as the scent of cinnamon filled the air. The pie in the oven was for the center's staff dinner that evening, an informal thank you for the volunteers and kids who had helped paint the final section of the mural. It wasn't a fundraiser or a performance, just a night of warmth before the new semester started. She didn't expect the knock at her door. When she opened it, Piers stood there not in a suit or tailored coat, but in a faded long-sleeve shirt rolled at the forearms, holding a battered cardboard box. Her brows rose. "You planning to sell encyclopedias?" He lifted the box. "Actually, I was hoping I could store these in the art room's closet. They're supplies. Real ones. Not the kind that require a donation plaque." "Let me guess," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "You researched which brands were best reviewed for durability and price per unit?" He looked around the space as he entered. Unlike anything he'd lived in for years, books stacked on low shelves, a record player beside a window, and a chipped mug filled with paintbrushes near the sink. Felt like her. "I called a friend who runs a non-profit in Detroit," he said. She recommended a few vendors. She closed the door behind him. "You track down non-profit vendors? I thought you'd be less suspicious if I didn't go through corporate channels." Willa opened the box and pulled out a set of thick sketchbooks, a bundle of soft pastels, and a stack of high-quality pencils. Her fingers paused over a small metal tin of watercolor sets. "These are good," she said quietly. "I wanted to get it right this time." She looked up. "You could have just brought them to the center. I wanted to see you." Willa closed the box gently and rested her hand on it. "You're not flying back to New York tomorrow?" "I'm not flying back at all." She gave a small shake of her head. "You're walking away from everything?" "I've already stepped away. The board's got an interim CEO. They'll run fine without me for a while." "And after a while?" "I haven't decided yet." He leaned against the counter. "But I'm not leaving this place until I know what staying really looks like." Willa crossed her arms. "So you're just going to reinvent your life on the fly?" "I've built companies from nothing. I think I can figure out how to build something new if I'm willing to start small." She studied him. "You don't do small." "I'm learning." The oven beeped, and she turned away to pull the pie out with practiced ease. As she set it on the counter, Piers took a step closer. "I know I can't just insert myself into your life and expect it to make sense. But I'm not asking for guarantees. I just want a chance to figure this out with you." Willa looked down at the pie, then back at him. "You're not the man I thought you were when you first showed up." He nodded. "That's fair. You're more complicated. You make me want to be." After a long pause, she handed him a dish towel. "Then you can start by helping me carry this to the center." He took it, smiling. "I'll try not to drop it." "You drop it, you're banned for a month." "You'd really ban me? For a pie?" "Absolutely." He laughed, and the sound filled the space with something light and unguarded. The community center that evening glowed under strands of soft white lights. Inside, the tables were covered in mismatched cloths, each one hand-painted by the kids earlier that week. Laughter bubbled from the kitchen, where someone had spilled a bag of rice, and music floated from a speaker near the window. Piers carried the pie to the back table, as Willa joined a group of volunteers discussing plans for the fall art showcase. She caught his eye once across the room, and he lifted 2 fingers in a lazy salute. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. Later, as the night wound down, she found him outside near the mural, hands in his pockets, looking up at the newly painted phoenix. "I've been thinking," she said, stopping beside him, "about what you said. About staying." He didn't move his gaze from the wall. "And I think if you're serious about building something new, you're going to have to get your hands dirty. I've already ruined 2 shirts." She gave a short laugh. "That's a start." He turned to face her. "What else does it take? You'll have to listen more than you speak. Learn before you lead." "I can do that. And you can't run when it's hard. I've done that enough for one lifetime." She stepped closer. "If you're still here in 6 months, no press, no headlines, just presence, I'll believe this isn't just a phase." Piers took her hand. "I'll be here in 6 months. I'll be here next year. I'll be wherever I need to be if it means building something with you." Willa didn't pull away. In the weeks that followed, he stayed. He showed up every morning without being asked. He learned names, not just faces, helped install new shelving in the art room, started a mentorship program for teens interested in business. He never made a speech about it, never posted a photo. He just worked. By the time the fall showcase arrived, the center was buzzing with pride. Willa stood beside him as the kids unveiled their projects, everything from sculpture to digital animation. Parents clapped. A local journalist took a quiet photo for the community paper. When it ended and the last of the folding chairs had been stacked, Piers pulled Willa aside near the mural, the same place they'd met. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a narrow envelope from his jacket. She raised a brow. "You're giving me homework?" He handed it to her. "Open it." Inside was a single piece of paper. A deed. She looked up. "You bought the building?" "I bought the block. The center's on a 50-year lease now. Rent-free. No one can touch it." Her eyes filled, but she didn't speak right away. "That's not just a grand gesture," he said. "That's a promise." Willa folded the paper carefully, then put it in her pocket. "You're still learning, but that was the right lesson." He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "May I kiss you now?" She leaned in. "You'd better." And when their lips met, it wasn't rushed or fiery. It was steady, certain. Like everything that had come before had led to this exact moment. Willa pulled back just enough to whisper, "You're not who you were when you walked back into this neighborhood." "No," Piers said. "I'm better." They stood there beneath the mural, the lights from the center glowing behind them, the sounds of laughter echoing off brick and pavement. No headlines. No exits. Just two people who had found something real exactly where they never expected it. The crisp air of early spring carried the scent of turned soil and blooming jasmine as Willa stepped onto the old basketball court behind the center. The concrete had been repainted in bright, swirling colors by the kids over winter, a kaleidoscope of effort and pride that made the whole place feel more alive. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and looked over at the raised wooden platform at the far end, now framed by string lights and paper lanterns. "I still can't believe this is happening," she said, her voice low but filled with wonder. Piers stood beside her, sleeves rolled up, tying the last of the lanterns to the post. "You didn't think I was serious?" She turned to him. "About throwing a block-wide festival to celebrate the center's new lease on life? No, not at all. You did say we needed to bring the neighborhood together. I said we should have a potluck. You planned a full-blown arts and culture event with vendors, a stage, and a jazz quartet." He set the spool of twine down and walked toward her. "You've spent years pouring your soul into this place. You deserve to celebrate." "And so do they." She looked past him, where families were beginning to stream in through open gates, carrying trays of food, folding chairs, and homemade signs. "You know what scares me most? That you're starting to like me throwing big parties? That it's starting to feel normal. You being here. You being part of this." Piers reached for her hand, his grip warm and firm. "It is normal. This is my life now, Willa. You are." She looked down at their joined hands. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. There's nothing left to fall." Her gaze flicked to his. "You really gave up Fallon Enterprises?" "I reassigned everything to the board," he said. "I still have stock, but I'm not involved in day-to-day. I'm launching a new foundation quietly focused on education and community support. First project's already underway." "Let me guess," she said, a smile beginning to form. "You're not naming it after yourself." "No," he said, eyes steady on hers. "I named it after my mother." Willa's expression softened immediately. "I didn't know you had. She passed when I was 22. He looked past her, somewhere distant. "She used to volunteer at a shelter. Always told me the best way to remember someone was to live out what they loved." "And what did she love?" "Second chances," he said. "And people who never asked for them but deserved them anyway." Willa blinked hard, and Piers gently pulled her closer. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "You don't have to hold your breath anymore." She leaned into him, resting her forehead against his chest. "Then help me breathe, Fallon." The sound of music kicked up behind them, and kids began dancing in the center of the court. Someone shouted for Willa to come try the fried plantains at a nearby booth, and she laughed into Piers' shirt before pulling back. "Come on," she said. "Let's go be part of this." They walked hand in hand into the crowd, and for the next few hours, they didn't stop moving. Willa danced with the kids, Piers helped a group of teenagers sell their hand-painted greeting cards, and together they posed for photos beneath the finished mural now illuminated by soft golden lights. As the evening wound down and the last band strummed their final notes, Willa found herself sitting on the edge of the stage with her shoes off, feet dangling above the pavement. Piers joined her, 2 sodas in hand. "You've got paint on your cheek," he said, offering her the drink. She wiped it with the back of her hand. "Better. Worse," he said, grinning. "Now it's just smeared." She elbowed him lightly, then grew quiet. "I used to imagine what it would feel like to have someone next to me at the end of a day like this," she said after a while. "Someone who got it. Who didn't want to change what I'd built, just wanted to stand beside me and make it stronger." Piers leaned in. "You don't have to imagine anymore." She turned to him, eyes shining. "I know." The kiss that followed was slow and certain, the kind that didn't need permission or fanfare. Simply fit. A few weeks later, they stood in front of a small crowd in the garden behind the center, surrounded by friends, kids, and neighbors. There were no tuxedos or crystal chandeliers, just rows of wooden chairs, flowers picked from local yards, and Willa in a tea-length ivory dress with paint-stained fingers holding tightly to Piers' hand. The officiant smiled as they exchanged vows that were more laughter than poetry, more promise than performance. When they kissed, a burst of applause rang out and one of the younger kids shouted, "Finally." That night, they hosted their reception in the center's main hall. The tables were covered in hand-painted linens, the music came from a playlist Willa's students had made, and dinner was served potluck style, with someone's aunt insisting everyone try her peach cobbler at least twice. Piers gave a short speech, not about his past or accomplishments, but about how love had stripped away every mask he didn't know he'd been wearing. "I used to believe success was measured by what you build alone, but love taught me that real success is what you build side by side. And this," he said, gesturing to Willa across the room, "is what I want for the rest of my life." Willa didn't cry, but her fingers tightened around her glass as she raised it toward him. "To beginnings," she said, "that feel like home." 1 year later, the center's expansion was complete. The new wing dedicated to creative technology stood proudly beside the original building, funded entirely through anonymous donations from the foundation Piers had launched. No press coverage, no ribbon-cutting spectacle, just a plaque near the entrance that read, "For the dreamers who never give up." Willa taught an advanced seminar on community mural design, while Piers mentored students in entrepreneurship. They shared an office, a garden apartment a few blocks away, and a calendar so full of meetings, workshops, and date nights that they often had to write "sleep in" just to claim a morning together. And every evening, before locking up the center, Willa would find Piers somewhere inside, usually with a paintbrush in hand or a student at his side, and smile, knowing that nothing about this life had been part of the original plan. It was better. They had built something lasting. And they had done it not by changing each other, but by choosing each other. Every single day.